You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them.
This is Massive Late Fee with Mike and Mark.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Massive Late Fee. I am Mark. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mike. How are you, Mike?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
Doing well. Good week. We are now on just a little cleanup, a little information for you guys. We are now on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. I think we'll be on Stitcher soon. Obviously, you can see us on YouTube. And we are on the website, MichiganSportsAndEntertainment.com, as we are the official entertainment podcast of Michigan Sports and Entertainment. You can also find us on Facebook, Massive Late Fee. You can email the show if you have a question, massivelatefee@gmail.com. You can tweet at us using the hashtag MassiveLateFee to our Twitter handle at MassiveLateFee. We got lucky. We have a unique enough name where we're able to have the same brand throughout all of social media. Isn't that exciting, Mike?
Oh, yeah.
So we have some news today. I'm going to run the news by you, Mike. First of all, Swamp Thing is DC is making a Swamp Thing TV show. And they've now cast what they call the two leads. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Swamp Thing, but at first Swamp Thing is a person, and then he is a swamp thing. And so they're casting Andy Bean he's going to be in the new It movie, It Chapter 2. He's going to play the biologist that transforms into Swamp Thing, and Derek Mears, who's done a lot of Marvel stuff, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that, will play the monster. So, I mean, what are we going to see Andy Bean for 5 minutes of the first episode? That's my guess, because as far as I know, I'm not super familiar with Swamp Thing, the cartoon. I saw the movie in the 80s when I was a kid, but from my understanding, he's pretty much Swamp Thing all the time. It's not like the Hulk where he goes back and forth.
Yeah, I'm only kind of familiar with it. I'm mostly familiar with the comic, which was there was a run on it done by the great Alan Moore, who also did The Watchmen.
Yep.
I guess this take was completely different, where he just basically it was like an animated force. I know nothing about the Swamp Thing. I care nothing about the Swamp Thing. I'm really quite good with the amount of swamp-based entertainment I already receive, so I will not be watching this one.
You're full up on Swamp Thing.
Swamp Fox or fuck off, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I might be interested in seeing this if they do this in the style of Alan Moore. I mean, the thing is it's television, and I don't know exactly where it's going to show. If it's going to, I would assume that it's going to the CW. That's where a lot of DC shows go, and you can't do Alan Moore's Swamp Thing on the CW, not with the level of gore and brutality and stuff that he puts into it. So I think we're going to get a neutered kind of Linnea Quigley type Swamp Thing, which I'm not super into. So actually, it was Adrienne Barbeau.
Oh, is there actually like a movie in the 80s or something?
I think 1980 or 1981 or something like that. That was when Adrienne Barbeau was huge, when she was on Maude. For all of our younger listeners, there's no way I can explain Maude or B. Arthur.
Oh, B. Arthur is the best.
Imagine your uncle, but it's a girl. That's B. Arthur.
Kinda, yeah. That's not too far off.
So, she had a show in the 70s called Maude, where she was a liberated woman, and Adrienne Barbeau was her daughter, I believe.
And anyone who wants a great theme song, check out the Family Guy extended version of the Maude theme song.
Yes, that is hilarious. And they did do that back then. It's funny. I guess that airtime is so precious now. They don't want to do theme songs anymore. But when we were young, it was still kind of the golden age of the imaginative and catchy theme song with the different 80s sitcom theme songs and things like that. And they'd go on for 2 minutes. They take up
Oh,
2 minutes of airtime.
I love an overly descriptive theme song.
Yeah, that
Like
is.
I've thought about this quite a bit. If I could have been in any era, in any profession, I'd love to be like an '80s sitcom theme song.
Oh yeah, you'd be great at that.
Thank you. I'd be the next Mark Post.
That's right. Alan Thicke wrote the theme song to Different Strokes.
Yeah, he was a musician, I guess, at first, and then
Yeah.
he was on. I know he was on the Thick of the Night, which I guess Gilbert Gottfried. I don't know if you ever heard his podcast. It's
Yeah.
really pretty hilarious. He references that all.
Thick of the Night. Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of thick, the heads of Hollywood producers must be pretty thick because they have approved a Super Mario Brothers animated movie, which is supposed to come in May of 2022. It's Illumination Studios, the same people behind the Minions and Despicable Me. Better than a live action series, I suppose.
Yes. I mean, for me, Super Mario will always be Captain Lou Albano.
That's
I don't
right.
care what movie they make or what other animated iteration.
That was that cartoon / live action show in the 80s or early 90s where they had the Super Mario Brothers show and The Legend of Zelda, and it was all hosted by Captain Lou Albano as Super Mario and some guy they found with a mustache as Luigi. that was the best. That was the best video game. The best video game to screen, either TV or movie thing I've ever seen in my life.
It was. I cannot. I wish I could remember this. I was, for some reason, I was watching the Super Mario Brothers show not too long ago, like maybe a year or so ago, and I cannot remember who it was. It was like Nev Campbell was on it or something like that. It was just such a random
Oh my god, that is hilarious. Nev Campbell.
I don't know if it was her, but it was so odd.
That would have had to have been before she was really famous.
She was on Kids in the Hall too, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, yep, I remember. Yeah, that is funny. Nev Campbell.
Is there a more Canadian name than Nev Campbell?
I don't know. Pierre Lacroix.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know. Nev Campbell's definitely in the running, but I don't know what they're going to do. I imagine since it's animated, they're not going to bring it into the real world, like the Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. And I hope that they don't bring it into the real world.
Wasn't Scott Wolf in that as well?
Yeah, I think he was like a henchman or something.
The full Nev Campbell trifecta we got there.
That's right. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm not super interested in this. I don't think my kids will even really be that interested in it. I know Mario's still popular, but
Yeah, I think isn't it mostly like Mario Kart or like Mario like Battle Royale or some weird thing like that, like Smash Bros.
yeah, I think that's where most of the popularity comes. I think people still probably play I think there's like Mario Brothers Sunshine, and I don't know. I don't have a Switch or anything like that, so
I'm very out of the loop, but with the Super Mario Brothers.
we're not a video game podcast, people. Okay, so
No.
we're not gonna break this down, but it sounds like a bad idea for a movie.
Well, speaking of Super Mario Brothers, wasn't the Super Mario Brothers 2 like the weirdest game ever?
Oh yeah, what's funny about that is that wasn't even supposed to be a Super Mario Brothers game. They were making one that was like, a lot like the first Super Mario Brothers, but they were, I think they were surprised by how popular Super Mario Brothers was, and they wanted to rush out a game as fast as possible. So they took a Japanese game whose name I can't remember, and they
Nightmares on Acid.
yeah. And they reskinned it with Mario and the different characters, and they just released it. That's why it's like there's no connection to the Mario world at all.
Yeah, it's such a weird game. And then Super Mario Brothers 3, which was famously first shown in the movie The Wizard with
That's right, with Ben Savage. Yep.
oh yeah, that was Ben Savage, wasn't it?
Yeah. The Wizard. That was a great movie too. Imagine a movie today. Well, maybe they could do it because I think they call it esports now. The video game playing
Yeah.
is becoming really big. I bet you could do a movie about a video game contest.
Yeah, do you speaking of hilarious YouTube clips, which I don't think we're allowed to show unfortunately. But there's one from The Wizard where this kid just talks about his power glove, the most badass thing ever.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like in a case, if I recall correctly. He like pulls it out of like
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
yeah, yep, that's it. Yep, that's amazing. But it really wasn't that bad. It wasn't that.
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought that it was clunky to use.
Yeah, I don't even know what you use it for. Like Mike Tyson's Punch Out and nothing else.
Yeah, I think so. Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and I think you could do. That's the thing. It really only worked with the boxing game, and there was only one good boxing game for Nintendo. So you could use it for other stuff, but it was really awkward to try to use it.
Yeah, it kind of sucked. It wasn't bad at all.
No, in fact, it was terrible. But
What else is from the blogosphere?
our last piece of news today comes from a rival podcast called the Weekly Planet Podcast. I'm a big fan of their podcast, probably a bigger fan of their podcast than I am of ours, if I'm being honest.
Who are these fucks?
Well, they talk about comic book movies, but they have a segment called Hot Scoop or Shot of Poop, where if they have a hot scoop, they report it, and if it turns out to be true, then they win, and if they are wrong, then the host, James, has to do a shot of poop.
Huh.
But someone who is anonymous wrote into them and said that they are friends with someone who works at Lucasfilms. And apparently for Star Wars Episode 9, this actor, Matt Smith, who was on Doctor Who, he was one of the doctors, young, good-looking guy, is supposed to be playing a young Palpatine.
What? Oh, is he like cloned or something?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the thing. People were speculating maybe it was a flashback or something like that, but according to their source, and like I said, it's an anonymous source, so take it, with a grain of salt, a grain of space salt. That the role is pretty big, so I'm thinking that's what they're doing in the extended universe that they erased and everything. A Palpatine was cloned, and he had like a bunch of different clones and stuff like that. So I'm thinking maybe one of his clones.
Huh. I'd like to go on the record, just say that I hate Star Wars and it's stupid.
It sounds like one of those things where J.J. Abrams is doing a lot of fan service. I know that Rian Johnson in the Last Jedi moved away from that a lot, and that's what it sounds like to me. They killed, spoiler alerts for The Last Jedi, they killed Snoke, and I think that maybe this is sort of a replacement. I don't know. I don't know that I love this idea. I'm not looking forward to this movie. The Last Jedi killed any kind of enthusiasm I had for Star Wars, a once, fun franchise. Remember, Mike, when Star Wars was just a trilogy of well-made and well-liked blockbuster movies?
No. The well-made part.
I like them. I know you don't like.
Yeah, I know.
Star
My
Wars.
favorite quote about Star Wars that really just angers people is that George Lucas basically is what don't people get? This is like a movie for kids.
Yeah, the movie for.
So you have like a bunch of like 50-year-old men like arguing about, oh, this lightsaber was this color, this means that. It's a dumb movie. It's stupid. Ripped off Joseph Conrad's 10,000 Faces.
Yeah, the hero with 1,000 faces. Yep.
That too.
Yeah, and Hidden Fortress.
And wasn't it also what the hell was it? Buck Rogers too.
He wanted to remake Flash Gordon,
That's
but he couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon, so he instead created a billion-dollar empire.
he was no Seth or Seth. What's the guy's name? McFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane.
Who basically got the rights for Flash for Ted.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah,
I guess Flash Gordon was really big at some point, huh?
in the 50s. Yeah, like in the 50s and the 40s, they would show serials before movies. So they'd show like it's like a 10-minute long thing, and then it'd be like, oh, continued next time, and you'd have to go to another movie to see the continuation of the plot. But yeah, they were big when George Lucas was a kid. That's why he liked them so much. That kind of structure and everything really informed a lot of what he did with Star Wars. But I don't. Here's the thing: is I straddle the line. I like the movies. I don't watch any of the TV shows. I've never read a Star Wars novel. I've never read a Star Wars comic book. I've never, I've never gone as any farther with it than the movies, and I've never been to Comic-Con in my life, and I've never dressed up as a Star Wars character because I'm not a nerd. But I like about 1/3 of the films.
The Empire Strikes Back, I assume.
Yeah, the first one and The Empire Strikes Back, and
Oh yeah, there's like 8 of them now, so I guess a third could be an entire trilogy.
I like Return of the Jedi a little bit. It's more nostalgia than
Man, you're
anything else.
such a latecomer. Those are the fourth, fifth, and sixth movies. You don't like the originals, 1, 2, and 3?
No, as you know, we saw them together in the theater, and
Possibly. I don't know. Could have been.
it was a horrifying experience. It was really bad.
Yeah. We didn't try to murder anybody at this one, but I kind of felt.
Yeah,
While we're talking about Star Wars real quick, I just want to point out that a lot of people mention them as being science fiction movies. They're not. They're fantasy movies at
Yeah,
best. There's nothing
absolutely.
sci-fi about them.
no,
Not even soft sci-fi. They have laser swords and space. That's the only sci-fi element there is.
no, and anything that would be considered a sci-fi element is just a convenience. Like they have starships, but it's just to get from place to place. They don't care about any of the physics of Star. I mean, famously in the first movie, George Lucas cared so little about science that he had Harrison Ford say that the Millennium Falcon completed the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs or whatever it was, and a parsec's a measure of distance, not time.
See, I think that's actually a reference to how efficient the route was. Like he may have gone through some dangerous asteroid belts or something.
I
Like
think
how 20,000 leagues under the sea, people think it means a matter of depth, but it's really a length of measurement while under.
it's a unit of distance, right? I think what they did in the Solo movie that I know you haven't seen is they sort of tried to retcon it, where they had him go close to a black hole.
George Lucas does not retcon anything, okay?
Well, he had nothing to do with that movie because he'd sold Star Wars at that point. But they had him go close to a black hole, so I think it allowed him to cover this distance in a less amount of time because he went by this black hole, which reduced time because of time dilation or whatever. But I think originally George Lucas just didn't know that was a unit of distance and not a unit of time. That's my theory. But no, they're clearly fantasy films. Star Trek is science fiction. Star Wars is fantasy.
Don't like Star Trek either. I'm like the worst huge fan of science fiction, but I don't like either of the big quote unquote sci-fi franchises. But I will give you that Star Trek is definitely in the science fiction.
Yeah. Well, they try to use science like that. Sometimes they use science as if it's magic, which is something that
Oh, yeah.
that pisses me off because they'll get into some kind of problem and they're like, well, if we reverse the polarity and they basically, they just go into this techno-babble gobbledygook that, is sort of based on real science, but it's not wholly connected to any science that actually exists today. So it's basically just like, oh, we can do this. It's the easiest way to write yourself out of a problem.
Oh yeah, for sure. And can we just agree that Aliens is the best sci-fi movie ever made?
Oh, well, you will have no argument from me there, because
Right.
Alien and Aliens are two of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to distract us from the main topic so much. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. So now, speaking of distracted, I think that the dad on Alf was distracted when people were taking photos of him, which I'll tell you about in our regular segment, Celebrity Criminal Inkblot. It's a well-named segment. I don't want any letters on the name of the segment. But this is where we tell you about crimes committed by celebrities. Mike, do you want to go first so that we can save this very delicious story for the end, or do you want me to go first because you just can't wait to hear it?
I've been waiting to hear this since last week, so go ahead.
Okay. So, the dad from Alf, a man named Max Wright. If you've never seen Alf, picture any 80s dad, and that's what he looked like on the show. He after the show was over, he was photographed and caught by the National Enquirer. I think this was probably about 3 or 4 years after the show was over, smoking crack and having gay sex with two men. One.
Oh, they cancel each other out.
Right. That's true. I forgot about the inverse property of homosexual sex. If you have two men, then they cancel out and it's like you're masturbating. But yeah, one black and one white man. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
You can say he's not a racist, that's for sure.
right. But smoking crack in a crack house and then having sex with the men, and it was plastered. I mean, if you ever go online and look it up, you should, and anyone out there,
I don't think I will.
you should look it up. But there is there's some interesting pictures of him smoking crack in this crack house. It's so weird because, and like I said, I mean, we don't have anything against homosexuality or anything, but the smoking crack's very shocking. And it's so weird because his character on Alf was so mild-mannered and, never did anything wrong, like the perfect kind of 80s father. And to see him...
And Willie Tanner quite frequently said, I will not smoke crack and have a threesome with two other men. I mean, there's a whole...
That's right. That was a famous Alf episode where he made that proclamation. And it just shows that he's a hypocrite. And like Norm Macdonald says, well, that's the worst part.
Oh, that's a perfect response, of course. Norm Macdonald referring to the Bill Cosby scandal.
Yeah, because Patton Oswalt, who I like and who Norm likes, said that what he thought the worst part of the whole Bill Cosby situation was the hypocrisy. And Norm's response was, I disagree. I think it was the rape. Because and the way he goes into the details is hilarious as always with Norm. But he's like, most I think you'll find most rapists are hypocrites. Very few rapists out there saying, well, I just like to rape, and I know it's not politically correct, but it's just what I like to do. And I was like, oh well, at least he's not a hypocrite, and that's the worst part.
See, I find this weird about this Max Wright thing because I would think that, especially in the 80s, like being like, well, obviously, star, he's not a puppet from Melmac, but one of the stars, the Elf show, he probably would have enough money to not have to go to a, a crack house to smoke crack with two other men he was having a sexual encounter.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't, like I said, I think this was maybe about 5 years or so after the show ended. It was a
Well,
really,
still, I mean,
yeah, it was a really popular show, and I'm sure it was still in reruns at that time, and I'm sure he was getting residual checks, but I don't know how long his addiction had been going on. Maybe he had spent a lot of money on crack at this point.
yeah, if you know anything about the Alf show, which we discussed last week, there were trapdoors that were essentially death traps all throughout the set. So maybe just he had like PTSD from working on Alf.
Right, maybe he got injured after falling through one of the trap doors that they used for Alf to be able to pop out anywhere, and he got addicted to cocaine, and then cocaine's expensive, and he had to move to crack.
And Alf is like a landmine for PTSD. Did you ever see the movie Permanent Midnight?
No.
It's based on the life of Jerry Stahl, who was one of the writers for Alf.
Okay.
And Jerry Stahl during writing for Alf becomes a heroin addict.
Oh my God.
And at one point he has like this really like disturbing hallucination where like they don't call it Alf, they call it Mr. Chompers. Well, like at one point he's having like a really disturbing hallucination where Mr. Chompers is trying to come through a door to eat him. It's a pretty good movie. I'm not a huge Ben Stiller fan like everyone else in America. I mean, it's interesting. Elizabeth Hurley's in it. I'm always a fan of watching her on screen.
Yeah, me too. I like Elizabeth Hurley a lot
because she's a great actress.
Yeah, have you seen Bedazzled?
I have.
Yeah, that's not the best movie in the world, but that's a movie I like to watch.
Oh yeah, Brendan Fraser is amazing. I think it's a pretty funny movie, but yeah, Elizabeth Hurley, I'll watch pretty much anything she.
Absolutely. So now, what about you? What's your installation in? I forget what we call this. Celebrity Crime Inkblot station.
How can you forget? It's a regular segment on our show.
I know. I just have that bad of a memory.
I see. Well, mine's of course not officially a crime, but it possibly is.
Okay.
As many people are, I'm a huge fan of Christopher Walken.
Oh yeah.
Oddly enough, I mostly know him from his comedic work, like on SNL, and he's in a lot of movies I like. Like he's in Pulp Fiction, of course. He has a memorable monologue. He's like only in the movie maybe 5 minutes, but his whole scene it just steals the entire movie.
Yep.
He's in the movie another. Written by Quentin Tarantino, not directed. True Romance. He's again in that movie, maybe 5 minutes, and has just an amazing.
Yeah, he's very good in that movie. I like that movie a lot.
He's on some like super amazing. He's possibly the only guest on SNL to have his own special like DVD. I know they don't really make DVD, but as far as I know, I mean, Alec Baldwin has been on there enough. He probably could get one, but I think Christopher Walken might be the only one who actually has his own special.
Yeah, I think I know. I remember those from the late 90s, early 2000s, and I know like Chris Farley had one and Adam Sandler.
Yeah, Will Ferrell had 3, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, I know I think Christopher Walken was the only one they did who wasn't a regular member of the cast.
Yeah, and he had like some great characters. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Continental. I know a lot of people are really into it. My wife was. He was in, of course, the Cowbell sketch. Mm-hmm. He was great in the. I think this is what you do that I love is the Centaur job interview.
Yep, that's a good one.
That's a great one.
One of my favorite ones is he played. Yeah, the census taker. I love that so much.
Yeah, that's good. That's the best. Was that what you were going to say?
Yeah, that's the one I was going to say. Yep.
Oh, that's funny. But what's kind of troubling is he was on the boat that Robert Wagner was on the night that Natalie Wood died.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I've read a little bit about it. It's really kind of weird, so it's kind of disturbing to think that I don't know if he was a participant, and I certainly wouldn't say that, but I mean, it's a possibility.
Yeah, and even if he wasn't, did he know what was going on? And I mean, there's never been evidence shown or charges brought against Robert Wagner in the death of Natalie Wood, but it is weird that the three of them were on this boat together overnight, Robert Wagner and her have a fight. She ends up overboard and drowns. It's a weird situation, and explaining Christopher Walken being on the boat is hard and weird
and hilarious.
So yeah,
I mean, maybe if you had worked with a puppet for a few years and was with a couple of fellas in a crack house, that makes sense. I mean, hey, is that a crime? Not to me, it's not.
God, Alf drove so many people to just maybe, and this happened in the 80s. Maybe Robert Wagner was watching Alf. Maybe they got into an argument about an episode of Alf.
He's not an alien. He's a mutant. Shut up.
Maybe that's what the argument was about, and Christopher Walken was trying to make peace between the two of them. And
my God, was Robert Wagner ever on Alf? Is what I want to know.
Oh my God, I should look that up. Let's see. Let me see if Robert Wagner was ever on Alf. I know he was on Heart to Heart. Oh, apparently not. No, not on his IMDb.
Well, would you put that on your IMDb?
That's true. I guess I'd have to go through every episode of Alf just to make sure that he wasn't on there. I do.
Better you than me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Better you than me.
Right. As you know, I do a video series on YouTube called Dumpster Diving that I don't think you've ever seen, but I think you're aware of its existence. And I did an episode of Alf one time when he dated a blind chick.
What?
Yeah, he was lonely, and he ended up getting a date through the radio. And the woman turned out to be blind, and he went on a date to her apartment and started describing things about the apartment to her since she couldn't see. Yeah, and then she ended up touching him at some point in the night, like touching his face before he left, and really probably was disturbed by how much hair she felt. But maybe
they had the great line, "That's my nose."
She might have just thought he was Bob Seger.
Yeah, could be. Another great Norm Macdonald joke there.
Yeah. That studies show that men with beards are more attractive. More fine work from the University of Bob Seger. So, before we get into our main topic today, I'm introducing a new topic that will probably become one of our regular topics because I think that this will be good. As regular viewers know, Mike doesn't like hardly anything and has not seen hardly anything when it comes to pop
Which
culture.
is great for an entertainment podcast.
So what we're doing is I have a segment that I'm calling Educating Mike, where I read him or describe to him the plot of a movie or a TV show or a comic book or something like that. And last week, regular viewers of the podcast or listeners of the podcast will note we talked about Archie versus the Predator. Which
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if there are viewers, people who just stare at the still image on YouTube?
I guess it's a little grandiose to call them viewers. I assume that most...
Hey, maybe they're blind women you can meet on the radio.
I assume that most people listen to this either while they're sleeping and they don't hear what's going on, or maybe while they're in prison, or while they're making a grilled cheese sandwich or something like that.
Oh man, I'd love if we got the prison audience. That's a captive audience.
Absolutely. But Dark Horse Comics, which is a comic book company that's business model for the most part, I mean, they do some other stuff, but they realized that if they purchase the licenses to some iconic characters and then just put them in versus battles, that those issues sell pretty well. And they've done a lot. That they were the first one that did Alien versus Predator, and they've done Batman versus Predator, Darth Vader versus aliens, a bunch of stuff. But this one is Archie from the Archie comics, the Riverdale world, versus Predator. And it's a 4-issue series. I'm only going to read Mike and our listeners the first series. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll have this as like an ongoing thing for the 4 of them. But okay, so it starts off where it's spring break, and the gang, which consists of Jughead, Archie, Betty, Veronica, and their black friend, who really doesn't factor into the story in any way, and I don't even know if we see after the first panel, so I guess it's just a diversity hire.
I didn't even notice he was black myself.
But anyway, so they're there trying to figure out what they're going to do for spring break. And Cheryl and her rich boyfriend come up and start making fun of them, basically saying, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to go camping? Or maybe you're going to go tubing on the lake. And the whole time Jughead is struggling with this bag of potato chips, trying to get it open, not caring anything what's going on. A real Jughead situation.
Weisenheimer.
And, he finally gets the bag open, and apparently there was some sort of contest because they won a luxury vacation to a beach resort. So they kind of rub it in Cheryl and her boyfriend's face. And the next panel, they go to this beach resort, which is called Los Predados.
Well, that's not good, even if it doesn't involve an alien from outer space.
So, yeah.
Hey, see, what are you doing?
That's funny. Yeah, you're going to a resort with a bunch of strangers that's basically called the Predators. Oh my god. So anyway, they sidle up to this bar, which is called Dutch's Bar, which obviously is a reference to the first movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger's character was named Dutch.
How dare you?
So they're all happy, and their friend Reggie's there too, and Reggie tries to get fresh with Veronica after carrying up her heavy luggage to her room, and she basically just slams the door in his face. So he goes back downstairs, and one of their nerdy friends says that he's busy at work because he's got to finish up the yearbook stuff before they leave, because for some reason it's due right after spring break. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me as far as the timeline goes.
Nope.
And it's not a plot point that comes up at all in the story. So, but anyway, so Reggie comes down, and Jughead asks him how everything went with Veronica, and he says, "No chick can resist the register. I'm a gosh darn sexual tyrannosaur."
No, it was especially here at Los Predadoros.
Yeah, but just like Jesse Ventura's character in the movie. And obviously Jughead, the Weisenheimer that he is, he cuts him off and says, oh, tiny appendages, very, very noisy and headed for extinction. That sounds about right.
And he goes, yeah, you think Veronica's right. I get to fuck Big Ethel.
So anyway, so their little geeky friend, I think this is maybe the only reason he's in the book at all. He pulls out a telescope, and it's so funny too because it's so weird how sexual this gets in certain weird. It really is Los Predados, but he says
Harvey Weinstein, the famous. They said they should reboot it, even though it's only a few years old. Just have to keep running into those people.
That would be hilarious. But he says, "Oh, gorgeous! I can't wait to press myself against your big aperture," and it's his telescope.
Well, yeah.
So he's looking through the telescope and he sees something shooting through the sky. I don't know why we need to set that up at all. At this point, everyone knows.
It's got to make sense, okay?
But anyway, so the rich people who are yachting, around the Caribbean or wherever this takes place, also see the thing in the sky. And they decide they're going to come check it out, and they end up on the same resort as Archie and his friends. And, they're making fun of him and everything. And but Cheryl, the rich bitch, she suggests that they have a fashion contest. So Betty and Veronica start, dolling themselves up, and this is a ways into the comic, but we finally see the first hints that the Predator's there with some, red heat vision panels, but we still don't see the Predator at all. So
I thought you said Reggie was already in one of the panels.
Yeah, that's right. But so anyway, so they decide to they get all dialed up and dress up and everything, and Cheryl says, "Oh, I'm going to pit Betty and Veronica against each other, and that will that'll piss everybody off." So everyone's voting, and Archie votes 10 for Veronica, and then when he sees what Betty's dressed in, which is just a weird, like, two-piece bathing suit, but it's one of those, like, skirt ones where it's like a mini skirt, but it comes down to her thighs. It's very fully covered, her whole...
yeah, it's Betty.
Her whole body, but she's got some weird fringe on the end, and and it's like purple and yellow and orange stripes. It's very weird, but
and then Archie goes, "Betty, you're not supposed to be having tits."
But there are some large hearts in Archie's eyes, and he crosses out the 10 that he gave to Veronica and puts an 11, even though it only goes up to 10.
Fuck?
So he's about to kiss Betty, and Veronica gets pissed and says, "How dare you?" And they start fighting, and there's a big tussle, and then we see from the woods the Predator is watching their fight, and he's, there's Betty and Veronica, and it shows their heart rates and everything, and basically Archie tries to break it up, tackles Veronica, and accidentally punches Betty in the nose.
My God.
Or actually, Veronica accidentally punches Betty in the nose as Archie's tackling her. So Betty gets, and they Veronica and Archie end up falling together on the beach, and they kiss with Betty bleeding out of her nose horrifically right by him. And, there's a thought bubble of a breaking heart, and she ends up running into the woods. So
those are the most wholesome comics ever.
So we see the Predator kind of following her with his night vision through the woods. Her gorgeous, weird bathing suit ends up getting torn up a little bit, so now you can see a little more skin. And she finds this cave with a jaguar face carved into it. It's
what?
It's like imagine the opening of a cave, and over the top of it is a giant jaguar face with teeth. Like, it looks like it comes from an actual jaguar because it has actual teeth, but it's way larger than any jaguar would ever be. So she ends up, as you would if you saw something horrifically terrifying in the jungle. She walks in, and she sees this dagger in a very ceremonial holster or ceremonial sheath in this like place of honor, and she ends up picking it up, and kind of like Indiana Jones, rocks start falling from the wall. She runs out. Her friends, now Archie's all upset that he made Betty upset. So Veronica, and Veronica's upset that she hurt her friend too. So all of them are out in the jungle trying to find him. And Cheryl and her rich boyfriend come with them. And they kind of get separated a little bit. The Cheryl and her boyfriend get separated from Archie and the rest of the gang. They end up finding Betty, and he apologizes to her and everything. Everything's good. We see some blood dripping down from above them that they apparently don't notice at all even though a giant splotch is landing on Veronica's shoulder, and then we pan up and they say, "Hey, has anyone seen Cheryl and her boyfriend?" And we pan up, and there are horrifically mangled bodies with the Predator sitting in between them, and he has ripped out their spines and skulls, and he's looking down at the gang, and they decide the next day that, sorry, we have to leave early, but we've got to get out of here. So they leave, and Betty has taken the sword with her. She almost forgot that she had it, but they go.
Did she check it or bring her carry-on bag?
Well, they're getting on a seaplane, which they clearly couldn't take home. But yeah, I suppose somehow she gets it through customs. They don't really explain that. They just they just go to Pop's the next day, and they're all sitting having a cheeseburger with some a sundae and everything. And they say, "Hey, it's so great to be home." But then in the very last panel, Archie says, "Anyway, I'm glad everything's back to normal." And you see heat vision. It's red vision. The Predator has made his way to Riverdale. Must have somehow, almost alien style, climbed onto the back of the seaplane, I guess. I don't know. I could imagine him trying to get through TSA.
Do you have any weapons on you? Whoa.
So that is the first episode of Archie versus the Predator, where Predator kill count 2, Cheryl and her boyfriend horrifically murdered, spines ripped out of their heads for the penalty. That's the penalty for the crime of making fun of Archie and his friends.
Well, to be fair, they were snooty.
Yep, and that's what snooty people deserve.
Are those? I think those characters. Those aren't from the normal Archie comics, are they?
I don't think they're. No, that's not. I can't remember the rich guy's name off the top of my head, but no, they're new. They're unique characters to this comic, I believe.
Oh man, this sounds like the best comic ever.
So next week we will talk episode 2. I can't wait. If anyone wants to get it, I know it's available on Comixology. I think it's $10.99.
You're paying way too much. There's a comic shop by me. You get it for like cover value.
Yeah, and you can get it at any local comic shop. But I might not have paid for it at all, Mike. That's a possibility.
Any of you who live in the Warren area, stop at the comic shop at 14 and Van Dyke. Ask the guy with the voice box, and he'll point you in the right direction.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's not a voice box. It's one of those like vibrator things you put in your...
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it is a voice box. He's very nice, but he's got one, so...
Support your local comic book dealers.
And don't pirate, or the Predator might be on your trail.
That's true. So, anyway, now to our main... Oh, speaking of Predators, Harvey Weinstein produced a lot of movies for the subject of our main talk tonight. We are talking Kevin Smith movies. Now, Kevin Smith... I
think we should point out that this is going to be a multi-part series, because you and I could both talk about any of these movies like ad nauseum. I know you're a huge fan. I'm not. Wouldn't claim I'm as big of a fan as you. But I am also a very...
Yeah, I think we're both probably set pretty equal, I think. And I think we share a lot of opinions on the movies that he does that we think are good, and the movies he does that we think are bad. But yeah, his oeuvre, or whatever you call it, is so large and diverse, and we could talk a lot about it, that this will probably be 2 or maybe 3 parts. We'll see how far we get tonight. But yeah, so I suppose the movies of Kevin Smith, I guess we should go chronologically?
Yeah, that'd be the best way to do it, I think.
So we'll start with 1994's Clerks. pretty solid entry. I think made 100% independently. I know he sold a lot of his comic books and maxed out like 5 credit cards or something like that to
Stole his car too, I think.
yeah, to make the movie. Really really a gamble when you think about it, but ended up being a indie darling that a lot of people liked. They got distribution through it's not the Weinstein Company, but it's
Miramax.
Miramax, yeah. The aforementioned Weinsteins.
Los Predatores.
So I like.
El Predator. I don't know if they're both predators.
That's true. Yeah, as far as I know, only the one, only Harvey. I guess he got the
Allegedly.
he got the asshole gene in the family. But yeah, so this is not my favorite Kevin Smith movie, but it is a very good film. I like it a lot. It was very different for the time. Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino both kind of almost simultaneously sort of started revolutionizing the way dialogue could be written in movies, almost like David Mamet style, but more focused on pop culture and things like that. And the dialogue was what really set this movie apart from a lot of other independents that came, because I love Kevin Smith. I'm going to try not to be super critical, but I'm going to be honest with everybody. He's not the best director, quote unquote, in the world. I don't think even Kevin Smith would argue with that. As far as shot composition, things like that, it's interesting. There are some interesting shots. It's an interesting direction, but it's not super inspiring direction. The strength of the movie is clearly the dialogue. And it also launched one of my favorite Kevin Smith properties, which was Clerks the Animated Series.
Oh, that is amazing.
Which we'll talk about at some point. But yeah, I'd put this. I don't know if you want to rank them, or I mean, it would be hard to remember each movie and where we ranked it. But
I don't think I really could rank them. A lot of them are very different from the other ones, so I don't think they're really comparable.
Yeah. But I would, I would say this is a definite recommend. I think, it's a great starting off point for one, and it's the introduction of Jay and Silent Bob. I know Kevin Smith has talked about how he originally wrote the part of Randall for himself, and that's why Randall has most of the good lines. But Randall, he realized that it was too difficult to try to direct and act at the same time. Plus, he didn't think he was that great of an actor. So he decided to give himself the role of Silent Bob, or wrote himself the role of Silent Bob, a guy that barely talks at all. But it really works. The chemistry between the two of them really work together, I think. And sort of, it kind of ties a lot of things together. Like the Clerks are obviously a lot in their own world, and I think Jay and Silent Bob, intentionally or unintentionally, kind of was their bridge to everything else weird that was going on in their little town.
Yeah, like you said, this is his directorial debut. I don't think he's a great director, but I don't think anybody else could have directed this movie. I think they would have ruined the dialogue, how important it was, because basically Kevin Smith makes the characters speak as if normal people of that age from that era would speak. It's almost like you could walk into a town next door and see these characters. I mean, they're all very realistic. They're fleshed out really well. You can kind of see it's not shocking what any of the characters are going to do, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with everything you said. I don't think anyone else, obviously no one else could write it. I don't think anyone else could, even if you wrote the script exactly the same way, I don't think anyone else could have gotten the same tone, I don't think it would have worked. I agree with you. And yeah, it's almost like magic realism. Obviously there's no magic in the movie, but it's like a hyper realism where, like you said, each of these characters is portrayed as if, because everyone speaks this way. Everyone in the movie speaks same way.
They all have the same kind of, they all have the same dialect in a sense. It's the Kevin Smithy.
Yeah,
But I mean,
exactly.
But I mean, and even though this is an independent movie, I know he went to film school shortly before this. He learned, the basics of directing, and like we said, he basically pawned all his earthly possessions to make the movie. He was working as a clerk. Was it at the video store? Do you remember, or
I
the party store, convenience store for those non-Michiganders out there?
I think he worked at the convenience store, I believe. Although I don't know. No, I think you might be right. I think he might have worked at the video store. But it was, I
Or
mean,
that person might own both. I think I'm not really sure.
yeah.
But I believe he filmed the movie at night, while they were closed because he knew the shop owner, and I'm sure he paid them something.
Yep.
But I mean, even though it's an independent movie, almost all the actors are amazing in this. Like Jeff Anderson is just brilliant. I mean, he plays Randall.
Yep.
Brian Johnson.
Brian
Does he play
O'Ha-
Dante?
Brian O'Halloran.
O'Halloran. Yeah, Brian Johnson obviously is in the other movies. Brian O'Halloran's great, and of course they play they play similar characters in other movies like Gilhead and
Yep.
this sort of thing. I mean, there are a few, like, it's kind of interesting. He put a few like literary references in there. From what I heard, or I thought I heard him say it at some point, that he put a lot of the stuff in there just to hope it would be picked up by the college crowd.
Yeah.
Like between a lot of the scenes, there's like like a SAT style word. I don't remember all of them, but I'm sure they've been analyzed to death. The main character's named Dante, probably in a reference to Dante's.
Yep.
And like, I mean, the sorry, I'm drawing a blank right here. The guy
The guy who what?
I'm gonna kick myself. The guy who plays Jay, I'm gonna kick myself when you say his name.
Oh, Jason Mewes.
Yeah, Jason Mewes is great in this movie too. I mean, they're charismatic. Randall's charismatic. There's even connections to the other movies, which we're gonna talk about next. Mallrats. They go to the funeral of a character mentioned in Mallrats.
Yep.
The movie is really. I mean, I know they had a bleak ending initially, which was that someone came in and just kills Dante at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a good idea to change the ending, to cut that out. I've seen that that ending, and it I understand what he was going for. He wasn't supposed to be there, kind of
For sure.
random, and like you said with the with Dante, reference to Dante's Inferno and things like that. I kind of get what he was going for when he thought about that ending, but I think he made an absolutely great decision not to do that. It's such
that was the best decision ever to not end it with with Dante being shot in the head.
right. But and it's such a tonal shift from everything else in the film.
And maybe he realized that if you think, I mean, in a sense, Dante kind of are in hell without being murdered, but he was in a hell of his own. He imposed it upon himself. He was the one who basically kept himself stuck where all the other characters were trying to progress and move somewhere else. He was just stuck at, I have to work here. I mean, he didn't have to be there, as he says multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, it's definitely the movie's definitely about the hell that we make for ourselves.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it in a long time. I would assume it still holds up. I mean, it's certainly a product. I mean, that's like a snapshot of 1994 living in New Jersey, being a smart guy who hasn't quite figured out what you want to do for yourself. Dante is a Stephen Smith at that point, I would assume.
Yeah, and like I said, I give it to him. He took a big risk, mortgaged a lot of stuff, his car, his comic book collection.
I mean, you couldn't he literally bet everything he had against himself, and was Yep.
And so I think that's a great success story for sure. And like you said, I don't know how he found I guess we should have probably read or done some research before we did the podcast. But
he knew Jason Mewes from a really young age.
Well, yeah, I know he knew me. I know he and Mewes have been friends for a long time. But I don't know like where he found Brian O'Halloran or
I think they just tried out for the movie. I could be completely wrong on that, but I think Brian O'Halloran just tried out for the movie. Jeff might have been his friend. I'm not sure, but I don't know. Jeff he steals the movie for sure. I mean, Jay's great in it too, but Jeff Anderson just steals.
Yeah, Jeff Anderson as Randall is probably the highlight of the entire movie. But even like the girl that plays Caitlin Bree or that guy, I think he's Rick Darris. that comes in and talks about how Dante needs to lift weights because when he lifted up the milk, even that small part, that's good acting. I mean, like no one is Al Pacino, or well, Al Pacino's a really bad example, but no
Al
one.
Pacino pre-1980.
Yeah, there you go. Like no one's De Niro or Nicholson or
Robert De Niro pre-1990.
yeah, exactly. And probably Nicholson pre, like, I don't know, 86?
I don't think you can say that because The Departed was probably his most recent thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. But anyway, yeah, he really doesn't go. I mean, he does some bad movies, but he really doesn't lose his ability.
He doesn't wallow in them like Robert De Niro does.
Right. But anyway, so like none of them is that caliber of actor, but they're all way better than the average that you would see at like a local community theater, or even a local one where they're part of the union and they're paid. The acting is very good in this movie.
Yeah, I would guess a lot of that is a testament to the high quality writing that Kevin Smith made for the movie. I mean, the dialogue is like amazing for the entire movie.
Yeah, and who's to say, because I've obviously you and I have both watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff when it comes to Kevin Smith and his movies, but I haven't necessarily seen a lot of him interacting with actors. It's possible, and I haven't read a lot about that either. It's possible that he's just very good with actors.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, he always seems to bring out great performances in all of his.
Yeah, the one bad thing that I've heard about him working with an actor was on Cop Out with Bruce Willis, which obviously we'll get to later, next week. But I hear a lot of people have a problem working with Bruce Willis, so I don't really put that on Kevin Smith.
No, I wouldn't either.
But yeah, so I think that's the good one. So we're gonna move on to probably.
Well, we're going chronological order, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking if it's my favorite or not. It's probably, if it's not my favorite, it's my second favorite. I
think this one's your favorite because I know you were for a while obsessed with this movie.
Love Mallrats, which is the second movie, the first big studio movie, Universal Pictures. Obviously Kevin Smith, and Clerks was a sensation once they got distribution. People started to see it and everything. They made I think something like 10 or 11 times their budget, and they got a deal through Universal, which ended up kind of constraining him a lot, I think, but he got enough of himself in there and everything. And I mean, obviously he wrote the script again, he directed it again, played Silent Bob again, got a lot of his regulars in there. This is the first time that he works with Ben Affleck. It's the first time that he works with Jason Lee, and the first time he works with
Shannon Doherty.
Yeah, the first and only time he works with Shannon Doherty, and I think the first time that he worked with I can't think of her name off the top of my head, the Joey Lauren Adams. She plays the woman who keeps trying to change, and Silent Bob keeps breaking in on her somehow. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But I'll give you the plot details real quick. There's T.S. who's in love with Brandy Svenning, and he wants to take her on spring break to Los Predios. No, he wants
Universal Studios.
Yeah, he wants to take her to the Universal Studios, and he's gonna propose to her and everything. And her dad hates him. And depending on which version of the movie you see, because there are versions that incorporate the cut footage, which there's a lot of cut footage in this movie.
The Civil War reenactment?
Yep, all that stuff. And I've seen both versions of the movie. I've seen the theatrical release, which is the normal movie that everyone saw, and then I've seen all the deleted footage, which you and I have both seen from the DVD, but I've seen all that re-edited into the film, and I'll tell you, the edited one's better. I mean, I like seeing the stuff that went on the cutting room floor, but the way they cut the movie, much more coherent, flows much better. It's much less choppy, and it gets to the comedy and stuff a lot quicker. So I think they made the right decision. I think that a lot of that was studio stuff, but I think they made the right decision with the way they cut the film. And I think they made a really good movie. Like I said, if it's not my favorite, it's my second favorite. Mike and I have watched the commentary, the audio commentary more than once, which comes up in other movies.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, when we get to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, we will talk about all the ways that audio commentary tracks come in as inside jokes for that movie. Which is
like probably the that's like the most 90s / early 2000s like take you could take it.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I think Mallrats is a lot of fun. I think it's I don't know. There's something about it. It's very charming. It came out in 1996. Mike and I were in high school at the time. Maybe part of it was, our age and just the time of life that we were in. But that one really, that was the one. I liked Clerks a lot, and I had seen Clerks, but that was the one when I saw that movie, I was like, okay, I'm going to see every movie that this guy makes, because I fell in love with that movie.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Mallrats, if not establishes, definitely expands the Askew-verse that it's often referenced when you're talking about Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
he basically, I don't know if he was in anything before this, but he almost essentially just plucks Jason Lee out of nowhere, and he's like Randall on steroids. Jeff Anderson's a great actor. He's amazing. Jason Lee is just a one. You just want Jason Lee's character the entire time.
Yeah, I believe he was a pro skateboarder. I don't think
he was a skateboarder.
I don't think he had done any movies. I don't think he was interested in getting into acting. He might have done a commercial or two or something like that. But he came in. I know he just came in for an audition, and basically Kevin Smith discovered him, and that shirt that Brody, that Jason Lee's character wears the entire movie, is apparently an amalgamation of 3 other guys who were the finalists with him for that for that role.
Right. Was Jeff Anderson in the?
No, I believe he. I think he was doing something else. I think he was busy on something else, or for some reason he couldn't do it. Or it might have been, and here's the other thing. It might have been that the studio wanted a more polished actor with with representation and all that crap. I don't know.
Yeah, but regardless of how he got in there, Jason Lee is just incredible in the movie. He's like the you're perfect, almost like Eddie Haskell on steroids, like the devil on your shoulder. The entire film, he's just like pushing what's his name? Jason London, Jerry London, one of them.
Yeah, I believe it's Jeremy London in this movie.
Yeah, which again, his name T.S. is another literary reference, which is kind of like a callback to Clerks. T.S. Eliot is who I think the character's.
Well, I think it's double, I believe, because I think it's no. I think you're probably right. I had a theory that now that I think about it's probably stupid. So,
okay, I got to hear it then.
Well, his name is T.S. Quint, which the Quint is a reference.
Oh yeah, let's go into that in a little bit, because there's multiple references to Jaws in this movie.
Yeah, well that's a reference to Jaws. Brody's character's name is a reference to Jaws.
Sheriff Brody. Yep.
And they were going to have a scene that's actually in
Chasing
Amy, right? But they got cut from Mallrats with their friend, another friend that they meet, who's named Hooper. And
and one more reference, I think we glossed over this in the intro. He was going to propose to his girlfriend at Universal Studios at the exact moment that Jaws popped out of the water, which every guy in the movie thinks is super romantic.
Right. But I always thought that maybe TS stood for the shark.
Yeah, it could be. Although his character is the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But now, yeah, now that I think about it, I think your theory is probably much better. And by better, I mean an actual theory, and mine's pretty dumb.
And another fun connection is I don't know Jason London or Jeremy London. One of them was on Party of Five, which was the star Nev Campbell.
Yeah, that's right. Another Nev Campbell connect. We've got a Nev Campbell bingo going.
All you players at home, take a drink.
But oh god, yeah, I hope someone invents a drinking game for this podcast.
Every time we interrupt or go off topic, take a drink.
Oh my god, we'd be responsible for so many deaths.
More than the death of our movie-going friend.
Oh my god. But yeah, Mallrats, it's just so. What is it about this movie? I think, like you said, first of all, it establishes that we're in a universe. Obviously, it takes at least 2 movies to kind of establish a connected movie universe. But Jay and Silent Bob come back. As you said, he talks about Julie Dwyer dying in the pool because she was supposed to be the one that's on the game show that Brandy's dad is hosting, and that was the funeral that they go to in Clerks. So, in continuity, Mallrats takes place, I think Kevin Smith said, a day before the events of Clerks takes place.
Yeah, it's a quick funeral, but that's close enough.
Yeah. So basically, this is the first time that astute viewers or whatever are like, hey, we're in a shared universe. These characters, are connected. I believe they talk about what's his name? Rick Darris. I think they talk about they talk about Rick Darris because
on a pool table, wasn't that? Or was that in...
Yeah, that's right. When Quint is talking to Joy Lauren Adams' character, and it's revealed that they used to date, and he said that she cheated on him all the time and stuff, and she said, like, when? And he said, well, you fucked Rick Darris on a pool table. And she said, who remembers that? And
Brody has a great line.
Yeah, Brody remembers, and he says, because it was a costume party and they were dressed up as Smokey and the Bandit, and he says, yeah, how many times did you get to see Smokey fuck the Bandit?
Yeah, that's a great.
But
another thing, I was trying to think of this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was trying to think how does this movie start, because it actually starts in an amazing way. Like a lot of good books, you want to start with a great opening line. Mm-hmm. This is just kind of like a panoramic shot of the mall, kind of establishing the different, locations and stuff. And you hear a story about his cousin Walter.
Yeah, that's right.
Was that Jeff Anderson doing that story? I don't. It might have been Brody.
I'm pretty sure it's Jason Lee. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that would make more sense because Jeff Anderson would make no sense at all.
Right, but he does. I think. Oh, they each tell a story about a cousin with the same name, and I think it turns out, according to Kevin Smith, they're cousins.
I think that's right.
That Jeff Anderson's
I think they even show them in a certain movie as cousins. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, but yeah. So they end up they're cousins, which makes a lot of sense character wise.
For sure, I would love to see a buddy comp with both of them.
Oh my god, that would be great. But yeah, so that's a good point. The way it opens is really great. He tells the story about his cousin, which is hilarious. Oh yeah, that's when the other story was told. In Clerks, Jeff Anderson's character Randall tells a story about his cousin trying to suck his own dick.
Oh yeah, and he breaks his neck.
Yeah, and then he gets Dante to admit that Dante's tried to do that before. and then he asks him when he did. He's like, I never did that, you sick fuck. After telling him that every guy's tried to do it at one point in their life.
Oh yeah, and I could be wrong. I'm probably not though. I think the cousin Walter is a reference to his good friend Walt Flanagan, who makes an appearance in the movie Mallrats, not Clerks.
Yeah, and they talk about Walt Flanagan's dog. and stuff. Yeah, that's definitely a. And I don't know if you've ever watched Comic Book Men.
Yeah, I've seen a couple episodes. Walt is on there, and also Brian Johnson.
Yep. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them. I've seen probably 2 or 3, but it's definitely an interesting show. But yeah, that's Walt's. I think Walt and Brian basically run the comic book store that Kevin Smith owns.
Is it Silent Bob's Secret Stash in Red Bank, New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like the show Comic Book Men, but it's to me it's too similar in format, and I think the format kind of limits them because it's more like a Pawn Stars type thing. Like, oh, you have Archie versus Predator issue 1. Let me take a look at that. And then Walt has like encyclopedic knowledge of comic books, so he talks about it. I mean, I like comic books, just not to that degree.
The one that I remember, because like I said, I don't even know if I've seen full episodes, but it's not a bad show.
Oh, not at all, no. And I mean, they're likable, they're funny,
yeah,
they're smart.
It's
not my.
I like Walt a lot, but yeah, the one I remember is somebody brought in and I don't remember what it's called, but it's the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, and it's enormous, like this huge toy that takes up an entire table. And they kind of haggle over the price. One of the guys, I think it might be Brian or one of the younger guys that aren't in the film, wants it for himself. So he basically haggles with the guy over the price. But that's the one I kind of remember the most.
Yeah, there's quite a few seasons, and I mean, I'm sure it's worth checking out if you're into that sort of thing. Just not really my thing personally.
Yeah, well, like I said before, I'm not huge into comic books. I enjoy it's one of those weird things because I like reading and I like I listen to a lot of comic book podcasts or like comic book YouTube shows. I end up knowing a lot of things about comic books I've never read or never experienced in any way because I don't know why, like I happen to just find them fun. Like I find them funny. Like the hosts, I think are humorous. So I end up listening to them. So I get a lot of knowledge of stuff that I ordinarily wouldn't have any knowledge about. But yeah, like that stuff can definitely be interesting, I think. And I like Walt Flanagan a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware that Kevin Smith has a podcast, Fat Man on Batman. I don't know if it's still running, where it's basically him talking about the character of Batman.
Yeah, I haven't actually
Which,
ever
again, is a huge part of this movie. It's pretty good. He has different people who played the role, like I'm not going to know the name right, but the guy who did the voice for Batman the Animated Series of Batman,
Kevin Conroy.
That's it. Yeah, he was amazing. That Batman the Animated Series is amazing.
I loved when I was a kid. I loved that so much. That's the other thing too.
That might be the best Batman. I'm not even kidding. I mean, Mark Hamill
and the best
plays
Joker.
Mark Hamill as a Joker is wow. He's incredible.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill might be the best Batman and Joker. And no, disrespect to Heath Ledger, rest in peace, who did, an amazing job, and Jack Nicholson did a good job in Batman.
Or Cesar Romero.
Cesar Romero, who famously would not shave his mustache to play the Joker, so it's just grease painted over. Yeah, but it looks so weird. But I love that, and that's the other thing too. Is I have an interest in comic book characters. I've just never really read a lot of comic books because I watched the X-Men animated show. I watched Batman the Animated Series when I was a kid. I loved both of them. But yeah, just for some weird reason, I just never have gotten into comic books. But
Yeah, but as we were saying, Mallrats is definitely a very tiny foray into Kevin Smith's obsession with the character of Batman, because Silent Bob not only thinks he has Jedi mind tricks, this is not the first reference to Star Wars. I mean, obviously, I'm not a fan. Clerks has a pretty brilliant take on the whole private contractors being used to assemble the Death Star.
Yep.
But then for some reason in this movie, Silent Bob seems to think he is able to use the Force.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Which I don't know either, but is this also not the first time that Silent Bob actually speaks, or does he speak? I don't remember if he speaks in this movie.
I think he speaks. I know he speaks at the end of Clerks. He says, something about how women, like women are a dime a dozen or something like that. Like,
yeah, you're right.
and where he says that most of them, or at least like not many women, take the time to make you lasagna.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Most
I
of
wouldn't
them
be
just
surprised
cheat
if
on
he
you.
put that in there just so he would make sure to be in one of his movies in a speaking role, because he might have thought Clerks was the last movie he'd ever make.
That's true. That's a good point.
It was such a Hail Mary, I mean, obviously he had the talent, and again, the writing was just brilliant for Clerks that he was able to make more movies. But I mean, it's certainly plausible thinking that you're like your early 20s, you spend every dime you've ever had to make this movie, that you're not. I mean, he was basically, him and Robert Rodriguez, who were around the same time, were basically the first people to make their own movie, and then, oh hey, you're a Hollywood director.
Yeah, exactly. His line in Mallrats is the shortest, I think the shortest line that he has, and the least connected to the story in any way. He just says, adventure, excitement, a Jedi craves not these things.
There you go. Yep, that's it.
But yeah, so that's, I think, to me, and we'll get to this next week, but to me, I think my favorite of his is from Chasing Amy.
Yeah, and then of course the Chasing Amy is hilarious because Jay references. He goes, "You always tell that Chasing Amy story in other movies," which is just great. Just like one thing he goes on and on about.
Yeah, that's so awesome. But yeah, this is definitely, like I said, if it's not my favorite, I wrestle between this and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But between which one's my favorite, which one's my second favorite. But this one definitely was the one that fostered my love for Kevin Smith movies. I think that it's fantastic. I know that he's quote unquote apologized for it before. He's had a lot of fun at the fact that it didn't make a lot of money, and that it wasn't reviewed very well by critics. I would argue that a lot of his hardcore fans put this one really high up there, though.
It's in with good cause. It's got like so many great links, and even sets up the rest of the View Askew.
Yeah, it does a lot too, and even that stuff at the end that he just kind of threw in. I've heard him tell the story about how he just wanted a monkey. He says because it was a major studio, so he said, they said, anything you want we can get, and he was like, can we get a monkey? And he said, yeah, sure. So they got a monkey, and he had no idea what to do with it. So he just puts that little coda at the end where he says,
and Suzanne, that's another story.
Yeah, and that comes in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess we'll end it here tonight. Next week we'll pick up with Chasing Amy. Maybe is the most critically well-received movie that he's ever done. It's another one that I like a lot. But yeah, we'll start with that next week. So everyone, listeners, you can reach us, as I said before, on at Massive Late Fee on Twitter, Massive Late Fee on Facebook, Massive Late Fee at gmail.com. Send us a message, shout us out on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. We also have, like I said, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify. You can find us Google Play, anywhere, MichiganSportsAndEntertainment.com, anywhere great podcasts are sold, or absolutely free, because our show is absolutely free. And speaking of that, we've started a Patreon. If you go to Patreon, I think the way it works is patreon.massivelatefee.com, or it's massivelatefee.patreon.com.
Just search it, you'll find it on Patreon, or via our website. We have a link.
Yeah,
and by website I mean Facebook.
Yeah, I'll leave a link below here too, on YouTube and on the iTunes and all and all the other places. So yeah, just look for that link below. Anything that you want to donate would be great. It starts at $1, goes up to $10. We have, some special goodies that we're going to be, doing some exclusive content and stuff like that for the Patreon. Just any amount that, you wouldn't mind losing. If $1 disappeared from your pocket and you wouldn't even notice or whatever.
The amount of money you wouldn't mind throwing in the fucking garbage.
Exactly.
And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll have the cast of Elf on here. Probably not.
Yeah,
Maybe you
it's
could pick
possible.
what we review. You can pick. We don't care. Do you think we care that much? Does it look like it? No.
No, not at all. But yeah, so just it helps us out a lot to join that. So, check out our Patreon. Also, real quick before we go, Mike and I are going to be doing an audio commentary on Bandcamp, and it'll also be available on the Patreon. Obviously, we're going to do some Kevin Smith movies. I think we might do Clerks first. We might do Mallrats first. We'll have to talk about it. But yeah, look for that next. That should be coming out next week, I believe. Yeah, next week.
Yeah, we're looking at next week, so something to look forward to. Go ahead and put the razor blades down. You have a reason to live.
That's right. Hang with us for an hour and a half, and on the podcast, and then come hang out with us for 2 hours while we talk about and make fun of / admire a movie that we love or hate, depending on what week it is. I mean, you might be listening to this in 2054, in which case, all hail the lizard people. And I think that's about it. So, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. Follow us, like us, or donate to us on Patreon. We really appreciate it. Thanks again for listening. Mike, you got anything to say before we go?
Fuck Comcast for ruining your connection half the podcast. How about that?
Yeah, we've been having some trouble with Comcast. I think it's because they own a movie studio, and we've been talking pretty bad about the movie studio that they own, Universal. So
I heard that Comcast actually originated in Scandinavian countries, so that's probably what it is.
Oh my God,
fuck the Swedish, fuck the Danish, Norwegians can go to hell. Iceland, fuck you for Bjork.
That makes sense too. Bjork and her fucking dress. Okay, everybody, have a good week, and we will see you next week. Bye bye.
Later.